I'm starting it with this man, who's William Sanders, who only died of March this year, and he was tasked with improving how schools in Tennessee performed.
Yeah.
And whilst it doesn't say in the literature that this is what he's doing, the looks of it was he created value added so that he could focus on student progress, but also, I have a feeling, try and cut the chaff off of poor teaching.
In terms of your decision to choose it as a topic, is it because of personal experiences?
I get told this is where you've got to be, but I don't know where any of that comes from.
Yeah.
And so
who makes the decision?
Right.
That Fisher Family Trust. I've got it right. I've got it right. Exactly.
Why do they get to choose that? And I just think that's really interesting.
You can actually see when you're working frontline, you can see the impact of how sort of the government initiatives, both those that sort of are wound up in educational legislation and also within the principles of inclusion, how they actually impact in reality at the sort of the point of service delivery.
This is my topic, primary mathematics and the engagement of children with autistic spectrum disorder. So I began by thinking I'd quite like to look at a history of mathematics teaching and go back at least 50 years. I'm looking at people and their memories of how they were taught mathematics, so doing it that way through a narrative. What do they remember? What kind of lessons do they remember? What were the things that they remembered the most? Then I wanted to go back on the history of autism, which I think is actually an altogether easier task to do, really, because there's so much literature available on autism and how things have changed. And this is where I run into difficulties, because if I start looking at this, I need to then decide who we classify as having autism. Are we just going to say children who've been diagnosed with autism, or are we going to say those we suspect have autism, or those whose parents are telling us they suspect but haven't managed to get a diagnosis yet? And given that it's a spectrum disorder, effectively we've all got some characteristics. So how does that work?
I'm wanting to consider how does the environment in which the educational experience takes place, how does that count? How does it matter? And I ask questions of myself. Can the landscape in which the learning takes place be more than just a backdrop, but actually an agent, to use that term loosely, an agent within the educational experience?
Some of the reading I've done today, for example, suggests how there was an apprentice model of teacher education initially, and then higher education got involved, and then there was a partnership model, and then the partnership model kind of was too slow. Something I read today, the decision making was being too slow between the organisations. So then we've now moved towards school-led more, and that's why we have that 50%, that majority. So I wonder what's going to happen next.
And the idea is to help to get teachers to work together, to collaborate and to reflect, to give them some time to reflect to their own practice with others in a very structured way, and to help to develop a language. Because we know there's a lot of research that says when teachers start talking about teaching and learning, they're too nice to each other, sometimes they're very cosy and whatever. So by developing a language around teacher rounds and protocols, we were able to get over that.